Dad. The voice was barely above a whisper, but it sliced through the silence like a scalpel. I jolted awake, heart skipping in that cruel space between sleep and panic. The glow of my phone screen burned into my retinas. Calla. It had been 3 years. My fingers trembled as I swiped to answer. Calla? I croaked, not even sure my voice still worked for her. Hospital, she said. Then a crash. A sharp intake of breath. The call cut out. For a moment, everything stopped. My living room was still the same, a tilted photo frame of her 6th birthday, the lamp casting long shadows on empty furniture, a half-drunk bottle of water on the floor. But nothing was the same. Have you ever had a moment you knew would split your life into before and after? That was mine. Warren Buffett once said, "It takes 20 years to build trust, and 5 seconds to lose it." He wasn't wrong. It took me less than that to stand frozen in that hallway, phone still in my hand, the dial tone buzzing like a warning. I moved. I grabbed my keys, jacket, boots half-laced. The cold air bit through my clothes as I stepped outside, but it was nothing compared to the chill inside my chest. You don't forget the face of a daughter you left behind. Not when you pass by the family photo that used to sit in the hallway, before I moved it into the closet. Calla had been 17 when she stopped being our daughter. It didn't happen all at once. First came the nights she stayed up too late, music too loud. Then, the fights with Delia, my second wife, became daily. Grant, her stepbrother, always seemed to have something to say. Jocelyn, my ex-wife, claimed I was enabling her. You need boundaries, they said. Consequences. So we gave her consequences. Twist of it all? We didn't just kick her out. We gave her away, to Delia's side, to be raised right. Silas was supposed to be stricter, more grounded. She was supposed to toughen up. Instead, she became quiet. Distant. Invisible. When you live like a ghost, your voice starts to vanish even to yourself, she told me once. I didn't know what she meant. I do now. Jocelyn had ignored her. Grant got rough and called it tough love. Delia said she was too dramatic. I said nothing. That silence built a wall she never tried to climb again. Until now. The road from Goose Creek to Charleston General was 38 minutes under normal traffic. At 3:17 a.m., it took me 24. Fog clung to the pavement, headlights barely pushing through it. I drove with one hand gripping the wheel like it was a lifeline, the other fidgeting with the dashcam. She called me. Not Jocelyn. Not Delia. Not 911. Me. Why? Was it because I was the only one left? Or was it because she still believed I'd show up? I hadn't answered the last letter she sent. It arrived around Christmas, a folded card with a drawing of a snowman and 3 words inside, still here. Calla. I hadn't even opened it until February. My knuckles whitened. 92 miles per hour. I wasn't driving, I was chasing guilt on 4 wheels. If you don't come, I'll disappear for good. Her words echoed between my ribs. I didn't know if she meant death or just the final, irreversible vanishing of whatever thread still connected us. This wasn't a rescue. This was redemption on a deadline. The night before, I got a letter from a lawyer's office. Subject, Calla Moreau, disinheritance proceedings. It was official. Jocelyn's side had filed the papers. Struck from the Vernon Family Trust. No explanation. Just a dry line in legalese, no longer a beneficiary of the estate. I hadn't told her. I didn't know how. Grant had threatened her a week before, told her she wasn't part of us anymore. She texted me, just one line, they said I was never family. Was I ever? I never answered. That silence. It wasn't neutral. It was betrayal. And now? I was racing toward the daughter I'd let become a footnote in a family she never asked to join. The hospital rose from the dark like a monolith, sterile and sharp against the skyline. I parked at an angle, didn't care. Doors swung open like they knew I was coming. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead. The kind that made everything look washed out and tired. A nurse rushed past me, muttering into a headset. I turned, eyes scanning the waiting area. And there she was. Calla sat hunched in a plastic chair, arms crossed, hoodie drawn up. Her shoes were untied. She looked smaller. Like time had folded her in on herself. Her face lifted slowly. One eye puffy. A bruise blooming like twilight along her cheekbone. She saw me. Didn't smile. Didn't cry. Just stared. I stepped forward. Sir, you can't be here. A man stepped into view. Blue uniform. Badge. Hand resting just above his holster. She's in custody. The words hit like a punch. I turned back to her, but she was already looking down again. Would you believe someone the world has already dismissed? She's in custody, the officer repeated, and I felt everything inside me split in two. I froze, then stepped forward anyway. I wasn't losing her again. Sir, you can't go in there, Officer Carter said, firm but not unkind. He held up a palm, blocking the hallway like a steel door. She's being held for questioning. She's my daughter, I snapped, breath fogging in the sterile air. And she's a suspect, he replied, tone hardening. Behind him, I caught a glimpse, just the tip of her sneaker and the frayed hem of that hoodie. The same hoodie from years ago, the one with the bleach stain on the sleeve. A nurse passed by me and paused just long enough to whisper, she's the quiet one. Came in shivering. What the hell is she accused of? I demanded. Carter checked his tablet. Assault. A man came in, bleeding. Says she attacked him. That man hurt her, I hissed. Not what he says, Carter replied. She's on a holding report. Can't have contact. I pressed my palms against the cool glass door. This is a mistake. He didn't answer. Just watched me like a caged animal pressing against the bars. Would you trust your instincts over authority? Because I did. And I still do. Molière once wrote, it is not only what we do, but also what we do not do, for which we are accountable. And I'd done nothing for far too long. I turned at the sound of a familiar voice, and there he was. Richard. His arm was wrapped in gauze, his shirt flecked with blood, but his posture? Relaxed. Like a man who knew exactly which version of the truth would win. Raymond, he greeted, smooth as ever. Rough night, huh? I didn't answer. She snapped, he said, shrugging. Just like that. We were talking, and she started yelling. Next thing I know, glass, blood, she's been spiraling for a while. I stepped closer. What did you say to her? He smirked. She's unstable. Has been for years. You know that. Officer Carter looked between us, but didn't speak. Then Richard dropped the hammer. Delia called the police. She was scared. My stomach flipped. Delia, the woman who was supposed to raise Calla right, had sided with him. I should have expected it. Richard lowered his voice. They've got records, Raymond. Mental health reports. She's not well. That word. That weapon. Unwell. I clenched my fists so hard my nails bit skin. You put your hands on her, didn't you? Careful, he said, calm as a pond. You start yelling, they'll escort you out. I saw it then, how the system worked. I was just a visitor. She was just a file. And he was a man with clean paperwork and a well-rehearsed story. Behind us, a shadow moved. Glass door. Inside, barely visible Calla. She sat curled in the corner of the room. Hoodie pulled tight, her face angled toward the floor. A bruise trailed her cheekbone. Her lip was split. Then she looked up. And I stopped breathing. Her eyes met mine for the first time in 4 years. I didn't move. Neither did she. She mouthed something. 3 words. Don't leave me. I stepped forward, hand to the glass, voice cracking, Calla. Officer Carter was on me in seconds, voice sharp. Sir, that's enough. I need to talk to her. You're done, he snapped. Back up. Now. I backed away before I broke something, or someone. Because in that moment, I understood what hell really felt like, watching your child cry behind a barrier and being told you no longer had the right to wipe their tears. Have you ever seen someone you love and not been allowed to protect them? I walked away before the tears came. I found a bench in the corner and collapsed into it. The room buzzed faintly. 4 machines. Quiet sobs. Somewhere, a printer spat out a fresh report. And my mind spiraled. I remembered her, age 10, standing alone on stage in a red dress. Her recital. I had shown up late, missed the first 2 songs. She never looked up to see me arrive. That had been the beginning of me being a few steps behind her pain. There was a note in her intake file, one I'd managed to glimpse while Carter lived away. History of psychological distress. See prior incident April 19th. They were using it. Her past, her scars, her teenage cries for help, twisted into reasons not to believe her now. Sometimes, I whispered, people use your past to erase your present. That rage. That helplessness. It twisted in me like a blade. But this time, I didn't let it paralyze me. I stood. A woman approached from the side hallway. Officer Ramirez. Short, sharp eyes. She looked at me, then the glass door. You're her father? She asked. Yes. She paused. I don't buy it. Buy what? His story. I stared at her. I used to work domestic cases. His wound pattern? Doesn't make sense. The blood's on the inside of his sleeve. That's defensive. And she? She had bruises on her wrists. My chest tightened. Why are you telling me this? Because I've got a sister who went through this. And no one believed her either. She handed me her card. I'm not promising anything. But I'm not going to stand here and do nothing. For the first time since 3:17 a.m., I felt something close to hope. I returned to my bench. Ramirez stood near the door, arms crossed, watching. I waited. The sky lightened slowly, stained glass throwing colors across the tiles. The coffee in my hand was cold. My back ached. I hadn't blinked in minutes. Then my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. A message. I believe her. Meet me at 8. Naomi Kessler. Who? Before I could respond, another message popped up. Jocelyn. Let it go. You'll make it worse. Let it go. No. The sun was rising, but all I felt was darkness crawling over everything. I wasn't leaving without her. I arrived at the courthouse early, a gravel crunch under my shoes sounding impossibly loud in the empty entryway. The walls felt high, the air thicker, every photograph of polished judges in justice stared at me like I stood accused instead of advocate. Naomi Kessler greeted me with a crisp handshake, her binder tight in her hand, eyes clear and ready. She introduced herself, I'm Naomi. I'm here to listen when no one else would. The weight of the dashcam footage she held between us felt bigger than the folder. We've filed your daughter's testimony, Mr. Moreau. This initiates an internal investigation, she said quietly. A chill crept up my spine, the first step in exposing something I hoped I could handle. Meanwhile, across the courtroom, Richard Vernon sat with his mother Delia beside him, the smugness in his smirk a dry flame. I swallowed. I took a breath. Would you still fight if every room seemed built to silence you? I did. Martin Luther King, Jr. once wrote, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." I felt trapped by that idea, but today I was determined to be the danger to his injustice. Naomi stood when she handed the dashcam file to Judge Moore's clerk. The ticking of the wall clock sounded like a bomb timer in my head. Your Honor, metadata confirms the timestamp at 3:17 a.m., exactly when the incident image file begins, she announced. The courtroom shifted. Richard's lawyer raised objections, claiming the file may have been tampered. My voice cracked when I said, I recorded it myself. I was chasing her down the interstate. Silence. Then Naomi laid it bare, the file's data matched the hospital intake. My voice, my breathing, even the hum of the engine matched the hospital's ambient noise. The weight of seconds of silence afterward, me watching her on that plastic chair, pressed into the room. I heard my own plea to her echo in the clip, guilt, fear, love all bundled in 6 seconds of footage. Questions came fast. Why didn't you call sooner? Why did she reach you at that hour? I answered nothing. Naomi said, we need time to verify authenticity through the police tech unit. The judge nodded. The momentum shifted. The rhythm of the room pulsed like a judge's gavel about to drop. And then the counterstrike landed. Richard's lawyer presented a remodeled audio file. Kala's voice crying wasn't her, it was artificial. AI generated. She's using fake evidence to ruin a man's life, Richard declared, voice calm and practiced. Gasps filled the courtroom. Delia looked at me, eyes hollow. Naomi rose. Then we'll submit both devices and perform forensic verification. Richard's lawyer declined. The silence hung heavy, proof of guilt. The betrayal tasted cold. My heart hammered, I gripped the edge of my chair until my knuckles whitened. My daughter's voice was treated like fiction. The man who hurt her was now framed as victim. I realized Richard had planned this, accountants, lawyers, manipulated tech. My internal voice screamed, how long had this been lurking? I refused to break. I caught Naomi's look, grim, steady. I stood a little straighter. If he wanted tango, I knew the steps. Later, Officer Ramirez guided me into the hallway outside the courtroom. She leaned in, dropping the formal tone. Raymond, there's more. Confidential files slipped across her phone screen, aliases, old abuse complaints, the name Richard Kramer tied to the landlord file I handled in 2006. The past is never dead. It's not even past, Faulkner wrote. He was right. Richard was Tommy Lang's younger brother, the man I helped lock up all those years ago. This was revenge, built in whispers, launched in darkness. Ramirez said quietly, he targeted her, and through her, you. My mind rewound to courtrooms, to locked doors, to every step I took chasing bad men. I never thought one would come after me this way. Yet there I stood, weaponized by past service. When she laid the evidence, fingerprints at the Kramer storage unit, payment records, something inside me snapped. Not anger. Clarity. I wasn't just a visitor anymore. I was the guardian of her truth. I finally stepped into the holding room where Calla sat at a fold-out table, pale and silent. She looked up when I entered, eyes steady and clear. Naomi slid the signed statement across to her, years of manipulation, fear, bruises. I'm not fighting to win, she told me, voice soft. I'm fighting to be heard. I closed the door and sat across from her. You don't have to fight alone anymore. I said. She nodded. I saw the grief in her eyes, but also the steel. The invincible line of people who believed her was growing. What would you risk just to make someone finally believe you? I would risk everything. The room felt small but sacred, a place where our shadows met and held hands, not silent anymore. As we walked out of the courthouse, headlines flashed, unstable daughter accuses stepfather, family scandal rocks Charleston social circle. Cameras flashed. Richard exited ahead of us, his face a mask. I followed. At the curb, he cornered me with a shove, voice low, you took my brother. Now I'll take your daughter. Naomi stepped between us. Don't give him what he wants, she said. I didn't answer. From across the lot, Ramirez's shout broke the tension, we got it, his fingerprints match Lang's storage lockup. I clenched my jaw. I didn't know the end yet, but I felt the beginning of our justice. I woke to the smell of antiseptic and the steady beep of a monitor. Cold steel legs beneath the table held my body up while I watched the ceiling tiles move in slow motion. The hoodie covered my arms, bruised, swollen, hidden, and it felt heavier than the sheets beneath me. Dr. Elias Ford's voice broke the haze. These injuries are defensive wounds, he said gently. Somehow those words made everything louder. Years of being ignored, made small, dismissed, they exploded inside me. Outside, someone had posted footage of my arrival. The hashtag silent victim trended before I even knew it existed. I had gone from invisible to viral in one night. When you've been invisible for so long, what happens when the spotlight finally finds you? I tried to answer it as my heart raced. Trauma is not what happens to you, it's what happens inside you. The scar is now public. The wound still aches. Mother walked in like a queen visiting her realm, but she froze at my arms. Delia Vernon's composure cracked. Convoy me xin loy, she blurted. My mouth went dry, my tongue trapped between anger and disbelief. You protected him. You stood silent. Now you cry for me. I couldn't speak. She turned and walked toward the door. I stood, blanket slipping, hoodie still shielding me. Stay, I rasped. She froze, then stepped back. Flashbulbs exploded outside. Cameras followed our every breath. The corridor echoed with clicks and whispers. Shame flooded in, swiftly drowning the fleeting relief of her words. That collapse felt like surrender, but this time it pushed me forward. By the hospital entrance, microphones hovered like hovercraft over a breach. Reporters shouted questions about a high-profile family violence case. Delia signed a witness chart, formally implicating Grant's Circle. I held the phone steady and recorded. I ignored it, she said. The simple sentence turned into an anthem. I'm not just a victim, I'm historian of my own life. The text on my phone flashed, "You're trending." I didn't look. Have you ever had to fight your battle in public when your pain was someone else's story? I have. I was forced to become its author. At midnight, the house felt like a battlefield. I sat in Silas Kramer's old cellar, the scent of sawdust and chains still clinging to the walls. My bruise throbbed, a metronome of memory. Raymond stood in the doorway, quiet. You took my voice, I whispered, pressing my palm to the bruise. I'm taking it back. Later, Dr. Ford arrived, holding a closed folder, "When you're ready to fight." Heat drained from my body. Then a knock. Ramirez, flashlight in hand, held a photo, Grant loading a toolbox in Building C, quiet resolve. Undercurrent fury. I nodded once. Let the night keep vigil. In my father's study, we painted our war room. Timeline. Photos. Videos. The map of what they thought they buried. I traced the lines. Naomi's voice cut in, they expected fear. We'll give them prosecution. As Maya Angelou said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. I pinned the note under my photo. It felt like setting trap. Ray played his role, Dad on duty finally. He stood behind me. The strategy? Subpoena records, cover the leak, protect the identity we've been told wasn't ours. What's your strategy when every card you hold is counted against you? This was ours. Late night, I sat in my dark room, screen light flickering on my sleeve. The bruise peeked out of the hoodie, a reminder. A message pinged, there's a tape, someone else recorded the arrival. Dr. Ford's whisper. The folder in my hand. I clicked the link. 10 minutes to download. My breath caught. The world I was building stood on a flickering file. They thought the wound was mine alone. They didn't count on the world watching. I swallowed hard. The world was watching. The wood-paneled courtroom felt colder than I expected. The rows of seats were nearly full at 8:45 a.m., the hum of whispered conversations muted by the gravity of what was happening. I walked in with Naomi by my side, her binder held tight, her stride confident. On the screen above the judge's bench, bold letters, State of South Carolina versus Grant Vernon et al. I recognized the name, but something changed in me in that moment. The fight stopped being just mine. Officer Ramirez stood when called. My heart thudded. She looked at me as she said quietly, I saw your bruises. I refused to turn away. Her words landed like the first brick in a wall I built around truth. I locked eyes with her, realizing this wasn't just my battle, it was ours. Have you ever had someone step forward when you felt alone? I did, and she stood in a crowded room for me. Edmund Burke once said, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Ramirez did something. Outside the courtroom, cameras blazed like spotlights set on us. The hashtag Believe Her flashed on phone screens held high. Reporters shouted questions, lenses followed my every move. Grant Vernon's lawyer darted through the mob with documents. Naomi caught him, objecting to leaked files about my past. The tension soared. I felt watched, judged, small, but I refused to be silent again. When your story is live, I recalled reading in a survivor's forum, so is everyone else's judgment. I raised my chin. I wouldn't shrink. In the cross-examination moment, we played the dashcam footage and the hospital arrival tape. The courtroom gasped. I saw Grant's smirk vanish. Naomi leaned over and said softly, this is our moment. Then Richard's attorney pulled their move, a recreated audio file of me screaming, distorted. "She's using fake evidence," he claimed, voice polished. A hush fell. When the truth is finally visible, does it still feel safe? It didn't. But neither did giving in. Naomi stood, voice firm, "Then submit your devices for forensic review." Richard declined. Silence proved louder than words. My cheeks heated, rage curled inside. I gripped the edge of my chair and waited. Triumph was near, but vulnerability sat next to it like a shadow. Delia Vernon sat in the gallery with a tissue in her hand, tears streaming slowly. Grant in handcuffs. The full network of lies, Vernon, Kramer, the years of abuse, was exposed now. I saw Jocelyn in the back, eyes red, damp, looking down. Complicit. They built their house of lies. I just pulled the first brick. Frederick Douglass's words echoed, "It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men." They broke many, but I stood anyway. The pace slowed, the courtroom caught its breath. The jury entered. I sat still. Judge's eyes locked on them as he instructed. Then the verdict, guilty. Grant Vernon, convicted. The room exhaled, relief, shock, silence. Ramirez's testimony clicked in, evidence sealed. Naomi stood, hand held out to me. I rose and addressed the court. "This isn't about revenge, it's about respect." My voice steady. My power quiet but strong. "If you were in this chair, would you stand or sit?" I stood. Late afternoon light flooded the courthouse steps as I emerged, Raymond at my side. The sky was crimson. Naomi handed me a file marked confidential, possible accomplice still loose. My chest tightened. We won today. But the fight for peace just began. The afternoon sun sank behind the ancient brick of the courthouse, the last shutter clicks of cameras falling silent as I stepped onto the wide steps with Naomi Kessler and my father, Raymond Moreau, at my side. The verdict was in, Grant Vernon had been found guilty, but the air around us still carried an undercurrent of something unresolved. I felt the ache in my arm, the bruise pulsing like a reminder, we had won this fight, yet the war was just beginning. The scent of rain drifted in from the harbor, and I inhaled deeply, steadying myself. What does it feel like when you cross the finish line, only to find there's another race to run? I thought. I lifted my chin. We had crossed the line, and now we built the next leg. I told the room with words I whispered to myself, success is not final, failure is not fatal, it is the courage to continue that counts. Winston Churchill was right. I was ready. Early the next morning I unlocked the door to our new office space on King Street. The paint was still fresh, the drywall smelled like hope. I walked into that empty room, listening to the hum of the HVAC and the faint echo of possibility. Behind me, boxes lay unopened, in front of me, a blank space ready for purpose. Ramona Adler arrived with volunteers, Naomi with legal binders in hand. I stood at the front and said, I wasn't looking for gratitude. I was looking for an answer. Now I'm looking for change. They listened. They believed. The room shifted from victimhood to mission. But even as empowerment took root, I felt the data drop, a ping on my phone later that night, you've only scratched the surface. Next time, there will be no court. My chest clenched. I didn't falter. I forwarded the message to the police, smiled quietly to myself. The pace of life had slowed, but vigilance remained. At 3:17 a.m., the phone rang again, its tone familiar but the fear less raw. I sat up in bed, the bruise stinging like a band playing a minor chord in my memory. The dark hooded figure in the mirror flickered, and I asked myself, have you ever thought you were free, until your past knocked on the window at midnight? I shut it out that night with a ritual, texts from my father and Dr. Elias Ford, wrist check-ins, a promise I made when I thought I couldn't make promises anymore. In the morning, a young woman held out her hand at the office. Inside was a keychain engraved, "For those who believe us." Twist S24, the ripple of my story had begun to carry others. Healing was underway, but the whisper of what if threaded under the calm. Breakfast on the porch of the lake house felt simple. Raymond poured coffee while I watched the mist rise off the water. He broke the silence first. "I failed you." I reached for his hand. "You showed up this time." We hugged, a moment of quiet recovery. Then Ramona joined us, sharing her own fear of speaking out years ago. Her silence admitted, her strength offered. The three of us agreed, this time we stand together. Boundaries set with Delia and Grant, they either seek help or remain out of our lives. The scars remain, but we rebuild around them. Cautious hope filled the air, like spring after a long winter. The evening launch of Believe Her took place in a historic Charleston hall. Older residents, community leaders, survivors, all attended. I stood at the podium and told them, "We don't ask for sympathy. We demand change." Applause rose like a tide. A headline flashed, "Small Town Woman Challenges Status Quo." I glanced toward the exit and caught sight of Richard Vernon slipping behind a pillar. For a moment, I froze. Then I stepped forward. Courage over flight. What happens when one voice becomes many, and the many dare to be heard? I watched the ripple turn into a wave. Rain began to fall softly as I left the hall that night. Taxis lined King Street, neon lights blurred through water-splattered windows. I sat in the back seat, keychain heavy in my pocket, mission engraved on my ribs. On the radio, a survivor call-in line opened, voices trembling into the mic. I smiled softly. Then my phone buzzed, tick-tock. "I'll be your judge now." The message came from an unknown number. My heart jumped, but I kept calm. Victory had one face. The next battle was quiet. I stared out the rain-washed city. We won today. But the fight for peace just began.